I thought my daughter was having a baby, but then I found her secret journal. What I read changed everything. I never imagined my life would be defined by quiet routines and the fading memories of a man I loved more than anything. 5 years ago, I lost Tom, my husband, my partner of nearly 3 decades, to a sudden illness that took him away far too soon. Since then, the tulip garden we planted together has been the only living thing that connects me to those moments we shared, the only proof that love can bloom even after loss. Every morning, I sit in the sunlit corner of my living room, clutching my mug as I watch the gentle swaying of the tulips outside my window, thinking about Tom's promise to create a garden just for me, a promise he kept with every petal. Our house is quiet, almost too quiet, with the kind of silence that carries the weight of unspoken grief. Yet, amidst this stillness, my heart finds its greatest comfort in Sarah, my daughter. At 32, she has grown into a remarkable woman with a creative spirit that shines through every project she works on as a graphic designer. Though her marriage to Mark has been just over 4 years, their life seemed steady enough, or so I thought, until one afternoon that changed everything. That day, the phone rang, breaking the soft hum of the afternoon, and I saw Sarah's name flash across the screen. Her voice was trembling, fragile in a way I hadn't heard before, and I knew immediately that something was wrong. She barely got the words out before the tears spilled over. "Mom, can I come see you right now?" she asked, her voice breaking. I didn't hesitate. I told her to come immediately, my heart pounding as I prepared for whatever news she had. When she arrived an hour later, the light in her eyes was something I'd never seen, an almost radiant hope mixed with nervous excitement. She took my hands in hers, struggling to keep her composure, and whispered the news that made my breath catch. She was pregnant, 6 weeks along. For a moment, the world stopped. The garden outside seemed to glow brighter, the tulips dancing in the wind as if celebrating this tiny new life. I hugged her tightly, tears welling up in my eyes as joy flooded through me. "Really, Sarah? That's wonderful," I said, voice thick with emotion. But when I asked about Mark's reaction, her smile faltered, and I could see the shadow cross her face. "He's still in shock," she admitted quietly, and I realized the road ahead might not be as smooth as I had hoped. That night, I found myself talking to a photograph of Tom, the years frozen in his smiling eyes. "You're going to be a grandfather," I whispered, imagining him looking down from wherever he was, proud and smiling. But the fragile happiness we clung to was soon shattered when, a week later, Sarah showed up at my door carrying a heavy suitcase, her face swollen from tears and heartbreak. "Mom, I've come home," she sobbed, collapsing into my arms like a child seeking refuge. She told me everything through her sobs, the nightmare that had unfolded since she told Mark about the pregnancy. "He said he's not ready to be a father," she whispered, voice trembling. "He said I can't take care of both of us, and then he left." The words hit me like a punch to the chest, but I fought back my anger, knowing what Sarah needed most was my support. "We'll get through this together," I promised her, stroking her hair gently. "You're not alone, not ever. I'm here." I reminded her of my years as a nurse, reassuring her that when it came to babies, she could count on me completely. The next months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, nursery preparations, and quiet moments of hope amid fear. I converted her old bedroom into a nursery, assembling a crib that looked too small for the vast world outside. "We don't need anyone else," I told her often, my voice steady with conviction. "We can do this on our own." Slowly, Sarah's smile returned, the bond between us growing stronger with every shared breath and whispered hope. Then, one crisp spring morning, 2 weeks before the due date, Sarah went into labor. My nurse's training kicked in as I helped calm her fears and supported her through the long, exhausting hours at the hospital. When Liam was born, a name meaning strong protector, my heart swelled with a joy so deep it felt like it could heal every wound. Holding that tiny, perfect life in the sterile hospital room was the most precious moment of my existence. When his small hand wrapped around my finger, tears streamed down my face, and I whispered, "Welcome to the world, little one." But from the very beginning, something felt off. Liam never cried. He never made a single sound, even when Sarah whispered lullabies and rocked him gently in her arms. Sarah's protectiveness intensified, her eyes hardening with a fierce determination I didn't understand. When I asked to hold him, she shook her head firmly. "Not yet, Mom," she said, voice sharp. "He's not ready for anyone else." At first, I convinced myself it was just the nervousness of a first-time mother. After all, newborns are fragile and need special care. But my nurse instincts whispered warnings I couldn't ignore. Sarah's world became smaller and smaller, meals taken alone in her room, showers cut short, and outings stopped altogether. When I tried to invite her out, she refused, insisting it was too dangerous, too soon. Her focus on cleanliness bordered on obsession, and every day, I felt the invisible walls between us grow taller. I worried, but I didn't want to push her too hard. Still, every time I listened at her door, I heard only silence from the baby's room. No cries, no coos, no movement. The quiet was unnatural. One night, I found the courage to knock softly and offer tea, hoping to draw Sarah out. "I can't right now, Mom," she replied from behind the door, her voice guarded. "He's sleeping." But something about the calmness unsettled me. I knew in my heart that the silence wasn't a sign of peace, but something far more sinister. I realized then that this was not just postpartum nerves. Sarah was slipping away into a place I feared I couldn't reach. As I stood in the dim hallway, the moonlight casting long shadows on the walls, I heard Sarah's voice, soft and loving, speaking to the baby. "You're such a good boy, Liam," she murmured. "Mommy's here. Nothing will hurt you." Yet no sound came from the child. No stirring, no breath. My heart broke in that moment as I faced the terrifying truth my nursing years had prepared me to recognize. Liam was gone. The moment I saw Liam's small, lifeless body cradled in Sarah's arms, a cold wave of fear and sorrow washed over me that I could never have prepared for, no matter how many years I spent as a nurse. It wasn't just the loss of a grandchild. It was the loss of my daughter's grip on reality. She smiled gently, as if nothing was wrong, whispering sweet nothings to a child who had already slipped away into silence. My heart shattered, and though my hands trembled, I knew I had to be strong. For her, for what little hope remained. I gently opened the door, careful not to startle her, but the peaceful expression on her face made me realize how far gone she was in her denial. "Sarah," I said softly, hoping to break through the illusion she clung to so desperately. "This isn't the way. Liam isn't okay. He's gone." Her eyes, clouded and distant, met mine briefly before retreating into a place where only she could follow. "No, Mom," she replied with quiet conviction. "He's just sleeping. He loves me. He told me." That moment marked the beginning of a battle I never imagined I'd face with my own daughter. A fight against a reality she refused to accept. I knew immediately that professional help was necessary, but I also knew that confronting Sarah with the truth would require the utmost care and patience. This wasn't just grief. It was a psychological fracture, a dissociative barrier her mind had erected to shield her from unbearable pain. I reached out to emergency services with a heavy heart and explained the situation as best I could. The paramedics arrived swiftly, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding inside my home. When the medical team examined Liam, their expressions confirmed the tragic reality I had feared. Congenital heart disease had claimed his life, a silent predator invisible even in the first moments of his fragile existence. Sarah's condition was immediately apparent to the experienced EMT named Chris, whose 20 years in pediatric emergencies made him understand the delicate balance we needed to maintain. They approached Sarah gently, trying to guide her toward acceptance, but the distance between her and the living world felt insurmountable. As they took her to the hospital, I sat in the passenger seat, gripping her hand while feeling the crushing weight of helplessness settle deep in my chest. Sarah whispered stories about Liam, the way he never cried, how peacefully he slept, and how much she loved him. Words that underscored the tragic divide between her perception and reality. Watching her cling to the fragments of her delusion made every breath feel heavier, every moment more precious, yet more painful. At the hospital, Dr. Reynolds, a pediatrician with a gentle demeanor, explained the medical facts with a kindness that cut through the fog of denial. "Sudden infant death syndrome compounded by undiagnosed heart defects," he said softly. "These things happen despite our best efforts." He glanced at me with sympathetic eyes, understanding the dual pain of losing a grandchild and watching a daughter unravel. I nodded silently, absorbing the crushing truth, while Sarah sat quietly in the next room, still trapped in her alternate world. Then came the psychiatrist, Dr. Morgan, who carefully assessed Sarah's mental state and explained the diagnosis I had feared: postpartum psychosis with dissociative symptoms so severe that Sarah had constructed an alternate reality where Liam was still alive and well. "Her mind is protecting itself from unbearable grief," the doctor said quietly. But it will take time, patience, and a lot of love to bring her back. Those words gave me a fragile thread of hope, yet the road ahead seemed impossibly long and steep. The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits, therapy sessions, and quiet evenings where I sat by Sarah's side, holding her hand as she drifted between lucidity and the comforting embrace of her illusions. Each day, I witnessed both progress and setbacks, the battle raging within her mind more brutal than any physical illness I had seen. I reminded myself constantly that healing wouldn't be a straight path, but a winding road marked by small victories and painful detours. Sarah's world began to open slowly, her moments of clarity growing longer, and her grip on reality tightening like the first rays of dawn breaking through a long, dark night. One afternoon, as I sat with her in the hospital garden, she looked at me with eyes that were just beginning to recognize the truth. "Mom," she whispered hesitantly, "I had a dream last night. Liam was an angel, waving at me." Her voice trembled, but there was a faint smile, a sign that somewhere inside, the fog was lifting. Holding her hand, I squeezed gently and replied, "It's okay, Sarah. He's still with us, just in a different way." That moment felt like a fragile bridge between despair and hope, the beginning of a journey toward healing that would demand every ounce of strength we both possessed. I realized then that no matter how long it took, I would stand beside her, unwavering in my love and support. Returning home was never going to be the same after this ordeal. Our once quiet house now carried the echoes of loss and the fragile hope for recovery. The tulips still bloomed outside, their petals bright and resilient against the morning sun, reminding me daily that life could endure even the harshest winters. For Sarah and me, those flowers symbolized more than just beauty. They were a testament to survival, to love's capacity to heal, and to the quiet strength that grows in the face of unimaginable pain. As the days passed, Sarah's walls began to crumble, revealing glimpses of the woman I knew before tragedy had rewritten our lives. She started to talk about the future cautiously, her laughter returning in small, precious bursts. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed an undercurrent of fear, a lingering shadow that this nightmare might not be fully behind us. Despite my own exhaustion, I kept reminding her that she was not alone, that the darkest moments could give way to light if we held on tightly to one another. We would take it day by day, step by step, until the memories of Liam, both painful and beautiful, became a source of strength rather than despair. Though the journey was far from over, I held on to the belief that love, deep, unwavering love, could heal even the most shattered of hearts. And in that belief, I found the courage to keep moving forward, for both of us, through the long road ahead. The weeks that followed Liam's death were the hardest I have ever faced in my entire life. Watching Sarah slowly lose herself to a world where her baby still lived was like standing at the edge of a vast canyon, knowing the fall could happen at any moment but powerless to stop it. Each day, she clung to the illusion of Liam's presence with a desperation that broke my heart, whispering stories about how he never cried, how he smiled in his sleep, and how much he loved her. I knew deep down that this was her mind's way of protecting itself from unbearable grief, but seeing it up close was agonizing in ways I never imagined. Sarah's room became a fortress, a place where reality faded and fantasy took hold. She refused to let me or anyone else hold Liam, even as his body grew colder and stiffer in her arms. Her eyes, once bright and warm, now flickered with a fragile light that seemed to waver between hope and despair. I would sit outside her door for hours, listening to her soft voice coaxing the baby to sleep, singing lullabies only she could hear, all while the silence in the room screamed the truth I wasn't sure I could bear. It was like living alongside a ghost, one that only Sarah could see, and it tore at my soul every single day. Despite the crushing weight of the situation, I refused to give up on my daughter. I reminded myself that beneath the layers of delusion and pain, Sarah was still there, the woman who had once been my little girl, full of dreams and laughter. I leaned on my nursing experience and the strength I had gathered over the years to navigate the delicate balance between pushing her to accept reality and giving her the time she needed to heal. It was a tightrope walk where one misstep could send us both tumbling into despair. Every visit to the hospital was a test of patience and love. Sarah's progress was slow and uneven, marked by moments of clarity shattered by sudden relapses into her dream world. I sat with her during therapy sessions, holding her hand as she confronted the unbearable truth she had fought so hard to deny. I watched as tears streamed down her face when the walls she had built came crashing down, and I reminded her that it was okay to grieve, to feel broken, to be afraid. Healing was not a race, and I was determined to walk beside her every step of the way. One afternoon, as we sat together in the quiet hospital garden, Sarah turned to me with eyes that shimmered with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "I had a dream last night. Liam was an angel, waving at me, telling me it was okay." I squeezed her hand gently, my heart aching with a bittersweet mix of relief and sadness. "It's okay, Sarah," I said softly. "He's still with us, just in a different way, and we'll get through this together." That moment was a fragile bridge between the darkness and the light, a glimpse of the woman my daughter could be once again. I knew the road ahead would still be long and filled with challenges, but it was the first real sign that Sarah was beginning to emerge from the shadow of her grief. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet determination to help her reclaim her life from the clutches of loss and illusion. At home, the tulip garden Tom and I had nurtured together continued to bloom, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the pain that still lingered in our hearts. The garden became a symbol of resilience and renewal, reminding me every day that life, no matter how fragile, could find a way to grow even after devastation. I found solace in tending to the flowers, their quiet beauty a balm for my weary soul. Sarah's slow return to reality was marked by small but meaningful changes. She began to take short walks outside, allowing the fresh air and sunlight to remind her of the world beyond her grief. We visited Liam's grave together for the first time, standing in the stillness of the cemetery as she placed a gentle hand on the small white headstone engraved with his name. Tears flowed freely, but so did a sense of peace, a quiet acceptance that while Liam was gone, his memory would live on in our hearts. Despite these hopeful signs, I knew that Sarah's journey was far from over. The shadows of her loss still lingered, and the fear that she might slip back into her delusion haunted me every day. I held on tightly to the moments of clarity, using them as anchors to pull us through the darker times. With every step forward, I reminded her that she was not alone, that I would be there no matter what, and that together we could face whatever came next. In the stillness of the nights, when the house was quiet and the world seemed to hold its breath, I often found myself reflecting on the fragility of life and the strength of love. Losing Tom had taught me that even the strongest hearts could break, but losing Liam had shown me the depths of pain a mother could endure and still choose to hope. Through it all, I realized that family was not defined by perfect moments or unbroken happiness, but by the unwavering support we offer each other in the face of life's most devastating storms. And so, with trembling hands and a heart full of both sorrow and determination, I vowed to walk this difficult path with Sarah until she found her way back to the light. No matter how long it took, no matter how many tears we shed, we would face the future together, because love, in its purest form, is the most powerful force we have to heal even the deepest wounds. After months of watching Sarah struggle to hold on to fragments of reality, there finally came a day when I saw a glimpse of hope flicker in her eyes. A moment so fragile and precious that it felt like the first warm ray of sunlight after a long, relentless winter. The psychiatric treatment, though slow and often discouraging, began to chip away at the thick walls her mind had built to protect her from unbearable grief. I sat beside her through endless therapy sessions, held her hand as she wrestled with memories that felt both distant and unbearably close, and reassured her that it was okay to feel broken. Each small breakthrough was a battle won against the darkness that had swallowed her whole. Sarah's return to reality was never going to be easy or swift. The doctors warned me that postpartum psychosis and dissociative disorder were complicated conditions, and the road to healing was more of a winding path than a straight line. Yet, every time she opened her eyes and looked at me with recognition instead of confusion, every time she allowed herself to cry for Liam instead of denying his death, I felt the weight on my shoulders lighten just a little. Those moments, brief as they were, became my anchor, reminding me why I couldn't let go, no matter how exhausted I felt. During one of our hospital visits, Sarah shared a dream she had, a dream where Liam appeared as an angel, waving at her with a smile that said everything was going to be all right. Her voice trembled as she described the dream, but the smile that accompanied her words was genuine and heartfelt. I held her hand tightly, and told her that Liam would always be with us, in our hearts and in the love we carried forward. That conversation marked a turning point, a delicate crossing from denial toward acceptance, and I cherished it as the first step toward healing. Outside the hospital walls, life moved slowly but steadily. I found comfort in the tulip garden Tom and I had nurtured together, those vibrant, resilient flowers reminding me every day that even after the harshest winters, life finds a way to bloom again. The garden became a symbol of endurance and hope, something tangible in a world that often felt so fragile. I spent hours tending to it, losing myself in the routine as a way to keep my own heart steady amidst the storm. Sarah's progress was gradual and often interrupted by waves of sorrow and confusion, but the small victories became our lifeline. She began taking short walks outside, allowing the sunlight to touch her face and the fresh air to fill her lungs. On a crisp autumn afternoon, we visited Liam's grave together for the first time. Standing in the quiet cemetery, I watched Sarah place her hand gently on the small white headstone engraved with his name. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered a soft apology, a farewell, and an expression of love. It was a heartbreaking yet beautiful moment, the first real step toward finding peace. Returning to the house after that visit, the silence felt different, less heavy somehow. The walls no longer seemed to close in around us as tightly, and Sarah's laughter, though still rare, began to echo softly through the rooms. It was a tentative return, like the first cautious sprout breaking through the soil after a long drought. I reminded her every day that she was not alone, that I would walk beside her no matter how difficult the journey, and that together we would find a way to live with the loss that had shattered us. Yet, despite the progress, a lingering fear haunted me. I worried about the fragility of Sarah's newfound clarity, afraid that one wrong step might send her tumbling back into the darkness. Each night, when the house was quiet and I lay awake listening to the ticking clock, I prayed for strength and resilience, not just for her, but for myself as well. The role of caretaker was one I never sought, but it had become my purpose, my mission to protect and nurture her as she slowly rebuilt her shattered world. As the months passed, Sarah began to ask questions, difficult, painful questions that showed she was beginning to confront the reality she had long avoided. One afternoon, she turned to me and asked softly, "Mom, is Liam really gone?" The honesty in her voice cut through me like a knife, and I held her close, whispering the truth with all the tenderness I could muster. "Yes, Sarah, he is. But you're here with me, and we're still a family." The tears that followed were not just tears of sorrow, but also tears of acceptance, a sign that healing was truly underway. Together, we faced each day with courage, sometimes faltering, but always moving forward. Sarah's journey was far from over, and I knew that setbacks would come, but I also knew that the love between us was stronger than the darkest shadows. We found comfort in small rituals, the morning coffee on the porch, the gentle care of the tulip garden, the quiet conversations that stretched late into the night. These moments wove a new fabric of hope, fragile but unbreakable. Looking back, I realized that losing Tom, losing Liam, and watching Sarah struggle to find herself again taught me the deepest truths about family and love. It isn't about perfection or unbroken happiness. It's about standing together through the storms, holding on tightly when everything feels like it's falling apart. It's about the strength that comes from shared pain and the quiet resilience that grows when hearts refuse to give up. In the end, I learned that healing is not a destination but a journey, one that requires patience, compassion, and unwavering faith. As I sit in the garden, watching the tulips bloom under the fading light of day, I feel a quiet hope stirring within me. No matter what the future holds, I will walk beside Sarah, and together we will find a way to live again, carrying the memory of Liam in our hearts and the love that never dies. Just when I thought the worst had passed, and Sarah was finally beginning to reclaim pieces of her life, a hidden truth surfaced that shattered everything I believed about our journey toward healing. It began innocuously enough. One afternoon, while helping her sort through old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a worn leather-bound journal tucked away beneath a pile of forgotten photographs. The moment I opened it, the fragile reality I thought we'd rebuilt started to unravel, revealing secrets Sarah had kept locked away even from me. As I read the carefully penned words, my heart sank deeper than it had ever before, because what I discovered was more heartbreaking and complex than I could have imagined. The journal was Sarah's secret confession, pages filled with thoughts and emotions that had never escaped her lips. She wrote about a pregnancy she had never actually had, a carefully constructed illusion she created in the depths of her loneliness and fear after Mark's abandonment. The baby she loved and mourned so fiercely, the son we called Liam, existed only in her mind and on the fragile pages of this diary. The realization hit me like a freight train. Sarah had grieved not only a child lost, but also a child she had never truly carried into this world. Her mind, desperate for connection and love, had conjured a reality where she was a mother, filling a void left by years of emotional pain. Reading her words was like watching someone drown while desperately trying to save them at the same time. I felt overwhelming sorrow for the depth of her suffering and the immense courage it must have taken to share this hidden truth, even if only on paper. It explains so much: the silence, the refusal to let anyone touch the baby, the conversations with an invisible child. What had seemed like denial was actually an elaborate act of survival, a psychological fortress built to shield her from unbearable loneliness and abandonment. Knowing this changed everything about how I understood her pain and the journey we still had ahead. That evening, I confronted Sarah gently, holding the journal between us like a fragile bridge we both had to cross. She looked at me with eyes wide and vulnerable, the walls around her crumbling, yet her spirit still trembling with fear. "I was scared, Mom," she confessed in a voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of being alone, scared of losing everything. I needed Liam to be real, even if he wasn't." The confession was a wound and a release all at once, and I held her tightly, reassuring her that her pain was seen and her courage was immense. This revelation didn't make our challenges disappear. It deepened the complexity of Sarah's healing and forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about mental illness and the fragile nature of hope. I realized that supporting her meant accepting this new reality with an open heart, letting go of the life we thought we had, and embracing the messy, imperfect path ahead. It was no longer just about helping her mourn a loss, but guiding her through the process of letting go of illusions and reclaiming her true self. Our lives changed again in subtle but profound ways after that day. The garden outside continued to bloom, a quiet reminder that growth often happens beneath the surface, unseen but unstoppable. Sarah started therapy anew, this time focused on untangling the web of her imagined pregnancy from her real emotions. She allowed herself to grieve not just a child lost to illness, but the entire life she had hoped to live, the family she dreamed of having. The process was slow, painful, and often filled with setbacks, but I saw her spirit flicker with determination once more. We learned to live with uncertainty and fragile hope, finding new rituals to honor what could never be and to cherish what still remained. I watched Sarah stand by Liam's small grave, tears flowing freely as she finally said goodbye not just to a baby, but to a chapter of her mind's survival. Together, we planted a new rose bush nearby, a living testament to renewal and resilience, a symbol of love that endures even when reality shifts beneath your feet. The unexpected truth about Liam's existence changed everything but did not break us. Instead, it forged a deeper bond between mother and daughter, one built on radical honesty and unwavering support. I understood that healing would never be linear or neat, but in the chaos, there was still grace. And in the darkest moments, love was the light that guided us forward. As I sit now in the quiet of the garden, the roses blooming bright under the late afternoon sun, I reflect on the journey we have taken, one marked by love, loss, illusions, and truth. The past cannot be changed, and the pain will never fully fade, but we carry it differently now, with open hearts and hands ready to hold each other through whatever comes next. Life, in all its messy, beautiful complexity, continues, and so do we, stronger, wiser, and forever bound by the love that no illusion can ever erase.